All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode here on the Lure Lab. We have an awesome guest today, and we're talking glide baits, floating ones, waking ones. We're going to have some fun. This is episode number 34, and I am your host, the captain, Andrew Full. And joining us is going to be Austin Neary of Dream Catchers Guide Service down in North Carolina. And also, from what I'm hearing, he has a pretty sweet tackle shop down there. So if you're ever in the area, you're going to want to check it out. But I figured I'd get him on here. We're going to talk some big baits. It's that time of year. I have the itch. I got out this week and caught some fish on a 6-inch soft plastic swimmer. And this is something that I've always wanted to dabble in and learn how to do. And I figured, why not get somebody on here who is really good and proficient at throwing the big bait? So let's get Austin on here and chat about glide baits. What's going on, man? How are you today?
My dude, I thought you said you were going to have someone proficient at throwing swim baits on. I was actually looking forward to who you were about to bring on, and then all of a sudden I popped up on the screen. I'm like, I'm about to disappoint him.
Oh, maybe. I mean, I remember one of the videos. I think you're fishing with Milliken, and you're throwing that was a DRT Clash and brown trout, and I was like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
gotta get me one of those. And I think that was like the premise of this. I was like, you know what? It's impossible to get a hold of Ben as it is. And I'm like, I'm going to get him on for like a sinking and modification and get him down and fishing around wood and timber.
yeah,
Let's get Austin on here and talk about the surface and subsurface just underneath. And I
yeah.
thought that would be a good spot to get you on here and chat
No
about
doubt.
it. So,
Yeah, dude. It's something in our lakes, the way our lakes set up, like when a lot of people think about Carolina fishing, they might think of like like Santee Cooper or some of these lowland reservoirs. But, the Carolinas is a super diverse area. We have the ocean, and then you have the, kind of rolling hills, the foothills and the Piedmont, and then you have mountains. So where I am, it's super highland reservoirs. In fact, all the reservoirs I guide on are the highest lakes in elevation east of the Mississippi River. So we have extremely clear water, granite features, I don't know. It reminds me a lot of a lake, a small lake that my mom actually grew up on, and that I kind of grew up on was Highland Lakes in Northwest Jersey. So, I'd say our fisheries are pretty similar in the fact they're really clear water, a little bit of vegetation. I'm sure yours have some depth to them. Ours are very deep lakes, like 300 deep, 300 foot deep out in the middle and stuff. But I think our fish act relatively similar. And I've been guiding for a decade, dude. And I've just, by trial and error and lots of failure and lots of success, figured out how the heck to catch these fish on these big baits. So
isn't that fishing success and failure?
Say that again.
Isn't that just fishing in a nutshell? Like success?
No, I think fishing is mostly just failure.
Yeah, that's.
I tell people I'm cursed. I love baseball. Like I played baseball through college and everything. And then I love fishing. And I'm like, they're the two things that you can do everything 100% right and still fail. So I'm like, I don't know. It makes you appreciate success, I guess.
Oh, yeah. So just a little side note on your highland reservoirs real fast. Up here in New York, we have glacier lakes that are real clear, higher elevation lakes, not super high because they're not up in mountains, but a lot of them are down in valleys within a smaller hill region. But a lot of those lakes are like 3, 4, 5, 600 feet deep. And in spots on a couple of them, you can literally cast off the end of your dock and throw into 200 foot of water. So
are you serious?
They're a lot of like if you pull them up on like Navionics or Hummingbird and Lake Master, whatever preferred ship you have, you'll see like super tight contour lines like in areas that are right next to the bank that just fall off the mountain. And
that is crazy.
And you can one cast catch a smallmouth in the spring, and the next cast catch like a 15-pound lake trout.
That is sick. Yeah. That's it. We have a lot of lake trout up here where we are. So yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Lakers, we have rainbows, browns, and landlocked Atlantic salmon. So
oh my goodness, that's sick.
And every lake is a little bit different. But I want to get back on task here and talk into like glide bait fishing on the surface and slightly subsurface, floating and waking glides, right? Like, so what are you looking for when you pick one of those baits up, knowing that you think or know that you're going to get bit on it?
Yeah. So the first thing I think of is, the same thing I think of whether I'm conventional fishing, swim bait fishing, it doesn't really matter. I'm always like seasonal pattern. My mind immediately goes to what time of the year it is and what's going on with the lake. So, we have some lakes up here, upstate South Carolina, North Georgia, Western North Carolina, where they stock trout in March, right? And when they stock these goms, I mean, just heaps, whopping tons of trout in these lakes. Sometimes the trout all come out of hatcheries. So, sometimes there's injured trout. And if you've ever seen injured trout, they swim really slow up next to the surface. And so that's a forage source. That's a food source for the bass. So that's in my mind. A lot of these fish are, cruising up creeks because they're trout. They naturally want to be in that colder water. Some of those fish, some of those trout are diving into deeper water. Sometimes it's a gizzard shad thing, whatever, but there's always some kind of seasonal pattern. And then as the season progresses, right, you get around the spawn, pre-spawn, pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, and you get fish moving shallow. You've got brim moving up shallow. As the lake heats up, the trout that were, in that kind of mid-water column, they want to go up the rivers and creeks to get back in that cooler oxygenated water. And then in the summertime, that whole deal is really amplified. You get a big time brim spawn where we are. The trout, once again, kind of move into the heads of these creeks. You've got blueback herring, kind of our herring spawn where we are is kind of late spring, early summer. So they're moving to the heads of the creeks. So there's just all these seasonal patterns that are always playing in my mind. And basically, I believe in the KISS method. You know the KISS method, right? Keep it simple, stupid. Like when I think about seasonal pattern and what the fish are eating, I'm just trying to match my bait to that. And something I love to do is throw these high in the water column baits, whether it's a slow sinking glide bait or even a suspending or floating glide bait or a wake bait or a bait that's very versatile and can do both. Mostly because I'm ADD and I really like seeing the strike. But that's kind of what I'm thinking about first and foremost is seasonal pattern. And then from seasonal pattern, I'm matching the hatch accordingly. So
Yeah, I like that. So, before we dive into like the specifics of it, can you really like talk about a couple of your favorite ones, like wake baits and also like subsurface and the floating
yeah,
ones? Because I know you have an entire sleeve that you showed off air of
yeah,
baits. So kind of walk into
that's
like
just one
when you would
sleeve.
throw, oh, I believe it. So kind of walk into talk about when you would throw each one and maybe start with like your favorite and then kind of go through a couple of your favorites when you would throw it and why.
Yeah. All right. So, one of my favorite baits is a simple bait. It's like an MS slammer. It's a big resin bait. My buddy Trevor made it. He's a stud, but essentially this thing is literally, dude, it looks like a broom handle with a joint. It's got a tail and literally it just swims like this on top. Just so slow. And I have done really, really well, really kind of late winter, early spring, that kind of 50-degree water, point fishing, but very kind of strategic. So the deal with this bait is, once again, I think about the trout stocking. I think about how our big bass tend to hang out. Big bass love main lake points. If you can get a couple main lake points near some areas that are getting a trout stocking, there tends to just be big bass there because why do bass like points? I always tell people it's a navigational obstruction. If bait fish are moving from one area to another area and there's a point, that's a navigational obstruction the bait has to go over. And that bass is most efficient to sit there in the high spot of the point and be able to feed on bait fish going back and forth. So then when you think about a trout or something that's in transition, whether they're chasing bugs high in the water column, maybe they're chasing small bait fish high in the water column, maybe it's the bait fish are eating plankton high in the water column and the trout are eating those, and it's just the circle of life going. That point is going to have some big fish on it. Naturally, our lakes are so clear, and on really sunny days and calm days when they're a lot of times looking up, whether it's a spotted bass, big largemouth, even big smallmouth, but they're looking up, maybe they're in 20-25 foot of water and throwing a big slow swim bait that's just silhouetting. I mean, Could you imagine this thing just swimming above you, bro, at like super slow? Like as a bass, I'm just like, holy cow, that's a big trout that's going really slow. And, you know, their lives revolve around efficiency. They're not out there chasing the little tiny bait fish that the trout want to eat. They're like, they want to eat the trout. They want to go expend their energy on one big meal and go sit back down on the bottom for 4 or 5 or a week, whatever, how many days, and hang out. So in that colder water, I like really throwing that just wake bait, slammer style bait. I've got a few different. I've got a multi-segmented one. I tell people this too. The colder the water, the less the action. Just like baits. The colder the water, the less the action. The warmer water, the more the action. So, you know, where this bait is one single joint and it swims just like this, you know, you can imagine just it doing literally just like that, like super nothing. Where this one is multi-segmented and it swims very much like a serpentine style snake, you know.
So you'd throw that one in the water's like 65 and above.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I don't know when most guys start throwing top water. I really like top water around really low 60s, like 62 degrees, 63 degrees and above. And that's when I start to go with more of a serpentine style bait. You know, but the other bait that I'm a huge fan of purely because of versatility is the DRT baits. I know they've had a lot of hype the last couple of years, and some of it that is generated because of dream catchers and some other guys. But this bait is so versatile because it's a slow floating bait. So it actually, like when you reel it, that natural arc of the back creates some dive. But, you know, for the most part, it stays a foot or two. You can really get it down as a weight or as a walking bait, like 3 or 4 foot underneath the surface. But this is the thing I love about this bait, dude. It has many different bills. It only comes with one bill standard out of the pack, but there's 5 different bills you can get with this thing. There's one that's just like a medium diver. There's one that's a super deep diver. There's one that gives it this hard roll action. And then they make a wake lip, and this bait will just wake and roll on top of the surface. And they absolutely eat the dog turd out of it. But that's when I'm really starting to focus. Like, so we'll talk about this, right? So pre-spawn, you know, I like throwing a lot of subsurface baits, like sinking glide baits, Huddlestons, big soft baits like Mag Draft or something. You know, and then I've got that guy too that's like a big top water that I like to target these big fish with. But then around the spawn, I think about throwing a brim style wake bait, right? Dude, I have caught some freakzilla bags on brim wake baits around the spawn. And I don't have, for some reason, I went to the shop and I grabbed some baits, and I don't have any with me here, but there's a few different ones. Piz makes a couple. I'm not a huge fan of Piz baits, but you know, there's some waking brim baits that absolutely get toilet bowl flushed around the spawn, you know. And then what happens right after the spawn on our lakes, we have a herring spawn, but then what happens right after the herring spawn is a brim spawn. Mm-hmm. So from the herring spawn to the brim spawn, I'm throwing, you know, like smaller herring style baits, pearls, your bones, whatever. This is a tiny clash. I'm trying to match the hatch with the size and everything. I just fished a tournament this last weekend, and golly, so much heartbreak. So much heartbreak. It's like, that's part of swim bait fishing. And you'll get guys that are like, that's why I don't swim bait fish during tournaments. And I'm like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but there's times when I connect on everything and people are like, you're a dang cheater because you weighed in 34 pounds, you know? But anyways, back to that. That was just this little sidebar. You know, matching the hatch. Herring spawn, I like throwing that tiny clash. It stays high in the water column. You know, you think about those herring, shad, they're right underneath the surface, right on the surface, rock walls, clay points, whatever, you know, doing that. But then, dude, what we have happen, I don't know if you guys have this happen. Our lakes are so unique. We have wolf pack fish, like that cruise the bank, and wolf packs of 3 to, I've seen them as deep as 15 fish in a wolf pack cruising around brim beds. And it's madness. It's like ridiculous. I don't know if you'd ever seen the national championship on Lake Chateau when Tom Frink won on the Rat.
I did not see that, but I've heard about it.
Dude, Well, you need to do a little Google search of how these boys won. They're from UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham, or something like that, or one of those schools. Anyways, these fish, these giant largemouth, they get on the bank and they wolf pack around these brim beds. They literally slide into brim beds, blow all the brim out of the water, kill them, and then just continue down the bank. And dude, we really like hunting wolf packs with rat lures. And I have the PB rat's a good one. The OD rat is a good one.
The rats are wakers, aren't they?
They are your traditional wake bait, and usually how they have, because if you think about it's brim spawn, which means the water's probably warmer, it's over 65, so they have that most rats have that very serpentine style look. And dude, they absolutely are fantastic baits to get bit on by bass that are wolf packing. It's one of my favorite bites to target because you're visually looking at them cruising up the bank and you're presenting a precise cast, and they just absolutely come up and just destroy the baits. I've never had it happen where I catch 2 fish on one cast with a big swim bait, but I've had it happen 3 times where I did hook 2 fish at the same time, and I've only ended up landing one of them. And it's because they're so aggressive. Big bait hits the water, they just compete over it and both attack it, or it's just madness.
That sounds like fun. Sign me up.
Yeah, dude, it's pretty sick. And it really starts for us about this time of the year. It starts in May. We've had a colder spring, so like we still have fish on bed on a lot of our lakes. But you know, a lot of fish are, you know, transitioning herring spawn, but dude, those brim are starting to get on bed. So right here at the end of May, and then honestly through the first week of October, because what happens is in our lakes, I don't know if they do it because once again, yours are glacier lakes, ours are all man-made reservoirs, but they start to draw the lakes down. And what happens is you get all those immature brim that kind of like they're on sandy banks with nothing. They're like, holy crap, there's like no laydowns for me to live in. There's no, you know, riprap, there's no rocks, there's no docks. They're just on sand. So you get these monster wolf packs of like, you know, like I said, 5 to 15 largemouth that just cruise these banks really hard looking for these immature brim that are up there. And then a lot of times if you find like one tree in the water, like an isolated laydown, geez,
game over.
Oh my gosh, there'll be 25 big ones around it just eating brim at will, and you just throw a wake bait over them and they just come up and
Oh man, I want to do that. That sounds, yeah, like unfortunately a lot of our lakes don't draw the water down. Like
yeah,
some of our glacier lakes they do, and it's to like regulate the water, but we're not talking like feet. We're talking like 4, 5, 6 inches at most. They don't.
Yeah, like it's not moving the needle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Bailey and I just talked about this on the podcast with Hamner, that like when they cut our water down, it's like our fish just move to the next piece of structure. And like with island reservoirs, they draw the water down, they just lose all of their structure because that's where everything is laying in the water.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Yep. And it just, like I said, I mean, when I think about largemouth fishing, I tend to think largemouth are more residential fish. They live in the back of pockets, especially like where we are, right? Like we have spotted bass and some smallmouth in a lot of our reservoirs. So the smallmouth and the spotted bass tend to be more nomadic, pelagic, offshore bait chasers, herring eaters, and your largemouth tend to stay on the bank and back of pockets. So, you know, when they start drawing the water down, it really can concentrate a lot of those largemouth. And like I said, kind of that late August into September through the first week of October, when they really start drawing those lakes down, dude, those largemouth are so easy to catch. And then, I mean, even through when it's the water's up, just because the brim are up there everywhere. And then I cannot 100% put my finger on where the largemouth go. Like our lakes, they'll draw down, like one of our lakes, they draw down 100 foot. And I'm not talking like, oh, it's 100 foot from where it was. I'm talking about 100 foot in elevation, like 100 foot Fontana Lake. They draw it 100 foot down. You know, like Lake Glenville, they'll draw down 20, 25 foot. Chattooga, they'll draw down 15 foot. Lake Burton, they'll draw down 15 foot. A lot of these lakes are like these big deals, but it's weird when they draw them down. I don't know where the largemouth go. Like I think they just glue themselves to the bottom. They become really hard to catch in the wintertime. So
That sounds
But
about right. Largemouth, they're finicky little buggers. Like if you
yeah,
can figure them out, they'll eat, but they tend to do some weird things when you have some adverse conditions hit the lake. But you would think with it happening every year, their biological clock would understand that, and they probably
yeah,
do. We just haven't figured it out yet. But
yeah,
as we're talking these baits here, can you run through like the setups that you use? Because I know like every glide bait really has like a perfect rod for it,
yeah,
reel, line. Like you want like braid mono, some you want straight mono, some you want
yeah.
fluorocarbon. So kind of run through that, and then after your setups, kind of walk through like what colors you use in these baits based on the conditions: sunny, windy,
Yep.
calm,
Yep. Yeah.
stormy.
So first, I do think for most of these baits that we're talking about, if I could go with one setup, and listen, I'm gonna tell you straight up, I am a budget angler. I have felt a lot of rods and a lot of reels, and I have a really hard time justifying why some rods cost $500 and some rods cost $130. But I have no problem catching fish, landing fish, keeping fish pinned with a Dobbins 795. What is their cheaper? The
I'm in
Fury.
Erie. Yeah.
Yeah, the Fury series. Dude, that rod right there, it's parabolic enough to keep them pinned with treble hook baits, like a lot of the ones I'm talking about. It's also got enough, it's stiff enough to where you can keep them pinned really well with a single hook bait. But a Dobbins 795, and then I really like a Tatula, Daiwa Tatula. I really like either Daiwas or Shimano. I'm a bigger fan of Daiwa. I think customers get better bang for their buck as far as technology goes. The air brake system in Daiwas are top level, second to none. They've got all metal gearing. You know, so many of these reel companies, dude, they're just moving away, honestly, from just like plastic. They're moving to plastic gears. They're like all about money and profit margins, and it's a heck of a lot cheaper to develop a plastic polymer gear than it is to keep something brass or some kind of stainless. But Daiwa's reels are awesome, dude. And so anyways, a Tatula 150 or a Tatula 200 are by far, I honestly, once again, budget angler, I don't necessarily see the need for a Daiwa Tatula 200 because it's a deeper spool, and I'm going to half spool it with some kind of backer, like some old braid or some old mono. So for me, a Tatula 150 on a Dobbins 795, and I'd have two different rods. One would be the straight braid, and that's what I would throw my wake baits on. Because a lot of times when I'm throwing a wake bait, I'm throwing wake baits like a rat or a brim wake or something. I'm throwing those over trees, and I want something to pull them out of those trees extremely fast. And then the other setup is that same 795 Dobbins Fury with the Tatula 150, 7.3. All these reels are 7.3 to 1 gear ratio. And then I'm doing straight 20-pound fluorocarbon. And that's for fish that are maybe coming down the bank, wolf packing down the bank, around docks. And I just want that clear fluorocarbon presentation anywhere where those fish, like I think in a laydown, there's just so much happening with trees and limbs and everything. I think you can really get away with braid. But when you're going down the bank and these fish are just cruising down nothing banks, whether it's sand, whatever it is, man, they get a really good look at that bait. And I just like the quietness, the just softness of that fluorocarbon. And yeah, so those are the two setups. And then you're talking about colors, right?
Yep. So
Yep.
colors
So,
based on conditions, like jerkbait fishermen talk about it all the time. Like when it's cloudy, use something brighter like a pearl or a oyster color. And if it's sunny and calm, then you go to a translucent. So kind of break it down on the big bait side and what
yeah,
conditions matching it up.
I fall under the same category as far as like, man, if it's sunny, I want something that throws a lot of flash. If it's cloudy, I want something that absorbs the light. So your pearls, your bones when it's cloudy. Honestly, I look at it. I choose my jerk baits and I choose my swim baits the same way. The only thing that differs is sometimes these giants that are targeting trout, I want like a more of a matte trout finish in the clouds, where if it's sunny, I want something that's a very bright, flashy trout finish. And then same deal. If it's a brim bait, maybe I want something that's more of a matte colored brim bait when it's cloudy, because once again, that absorbs the light. I always tell guys, like, if you have a freaking dude, if you have a pearl, like you ever taken a French pearl mega bass in the clouds and just like tried to stare at it,
Oh,
your eyes you'll freaking think you're going blind. And likewise, when you're throwing, when it's purely sunny out and not a cloud in the sky, and you've got an M shad that's like pure chrome, you're gonna blind yourself, But I always found it funny how you can hold that pearl out there in the clouds, and you're like, oh, it's dull outside, it's nothing. Much. Oh my gosh, you put it there, and your eyes are like, stop staring at it. Your eyes will hurt, dude.
Oh yeah,
I
get it.
So
don't stare at pearl baits when it's cloudy.
That's right.
Sunlight advisory. I'm surprised the United States hasn't slapped like a caution label. We'll go blind if you look at a pearl bait in overcast conditions.
It's the craziest thing. It's so bizarre, but that's exactly how I choose it. And sometimes you can get away. Like, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. I mean, I know this bait looks really bright, but this is a pearl. This is a DRT Tiny Clash, and the color is called Queen. It's like a pearl. Maybe let me turn the light off. Let me see if that helps.
Oh, there it is. It's got like a purple, like luminous to it.
Purple chest, but it's a deep pearl bait. Let me see if I even cut that off if it really sticks out.
Yeah, and then what's the top? Is that like a chartreuse bone top?
Yeah. So it's a chartreuse bone color bait, but here's the deal. It's very shiny, so it works really well. I'd throw this bait early in the morning because it has that pearl, so it absorbs the light. It's very visible, but at the same time, as that sun's coming up, its finish is very shiny, so it throws enough flash to where it still can get bid. And then once that sun's good enough, I switch to one called an AG Smell, which is a greenback, very chromy, natural finish side. But so that's exactly what I do with all my baits.
Now I have 2 questions left for you, and this is a big glide bait thing that I've seen some people tie direct. Some people put like an O-ring type like snap on the front, or just an actual snap. So what is your preference for rigging it up on your rod?
Yeah, I'll tell you what's really weird is the DRT Tiny Clashes don't come with an O-ring, and I don't throw it with a O-ring or split ring. And then the Clash 9s come with one, and I just tie right to it. I don't know. I think it's one of those things. I think
preference.
It totally differs by the bait, dude. There's some baits like a Gancraft. It comes with a line tie. I'm like, part of me thinks if the engineers put enough time and effort into making that bait or putting it in the box with it, I'm like, oh, maybe they think it has better action with it, and I'll do it. And sometimes if they don't have it, once again, dude, you might think I'm actually pretty dumb. I just try not to overthink a lot of things. I just lock something in my hand and just throw it. I don't even notice the action difference a lot of times. I mean, people are like, oh, it gives the bait a freer action. But my thought is, if it's an O-ring to the line tie, that O-ring's just acting like an additional piece of the line. It's still tight. The bait has the action that the bait has. So, for me, most of the time, I guess I just straight tie because I just don't see the big difference in an O-ring or multiple O-rings. But that's just me.
Fair enough. I like that answer. You can ask like 50 different people who throw a glide bait, and they will give you 50 different answers.
Yeah.
So it comes down to always fishing your strengths and figuring out what action you personally like out of a bait and just sticking with it, and always kind of tweaking and fine tuning it, but make sure you fish it within your own confidence and not what other people are telling you to do. So.
Yeah. And I'm not picky. I get guys on guide trips. They're like, do you want me to add a split ring to it? I'm like, if you want to. I'm like, whatever you want to do. I don't really care. They're like, well, what do you think? I'm like, I
tie direct. Have a time.
Yeah. Like, let's just flip a coin, and then whatever. Heads is line tie.
Yeah.
Heads is direct tie. Tails is over.
You're probably going to get bit either way.
It's such a minute difference. That's what I'm saying. I just don't think it's super huge deal. I mean, on your soft baits that are sinking where the fish can track it, dude, I'm OCD about like, dude, it better look like the most natural freaking thing you've ever thrown in the lake, but when you're throwing big hard baits or these big weight baits that have a lot of commotion at the top of the water, I don't think the fish are like, is that a ST36 one-aught or an extra O-ring? I just think they're just going up there and smashing it if they want to smash it. And if they don't want to smash it, they're in a nasty mood, then that happens too.
Yeah.
So,
Fish. So
yeah.
Austin, I'm going to hit you with our final question here, and it's customized by Do It Molds. And you can create all kinds of custom tackle with the stuff that they offer, like molds, soft plastics, and etc. But the question is, for those who have never thrown a big bait before, like a glide bait or a floating wake bait, or in that general specific terms of bait, what is the best advice you would give someone who is picking it up for the first time?
Okay. I had a guy. This is great. Let's see if I can find this on my phone real quick. But this guy, he messages me the other day and says, dude, I've really been struggling with a glide bait. I don't know what the heck the deal is. Don't know why I'm getting a lot of followers, but I can't get them to eat it. And I can't find it. He says, what should I do? And I told him, oh man, I want to find this so bad. I said, just speed it up a little bit. And he goes, is that it? And I'm like, yeah, just speed it up. And he texted me back like an hour later and goes, dude, just caught a 7-pounder. And he said, your advice worked. So what happens is a lot of times when guys are throwing swim baits, people see followers and their first reaction is, oh, that fish is following. I need to slow it down so it can catch it. But I don't think they realize like a bass can swim like 25 miles per hour. Like they are extremely quick creatures. If they want to eat something, they're going to eat it. So a lot of times when they're following it, they're just following it out of curiosity. But here's the deal. I have never in nature seen a bait fish getting chased by a bass and slow down.
Yeah.
In fact, I need to start educating bait fish and tell them, hey, if you're getting chased by a bass, just slow down because
stop what you're doing.
yeah, the faster you go, the more aggressive they're going to get. So what happens is guys will get followers. They see a giant, they go like this, or they go like this and keep it real slow. Yeah, and those bass are like, whoa, that thing's slowed down. That's not right. And it swims off. Where a lot of times when I'm getting followers, whether it be a wake bait, top of the water glide bait. Now with forward facing sonar, it's ignorant because I can see my soft baits down there. And what I'll do is I'll take those baits, whether I'm looking at them on forward facing and I've got a follower, or maybe I'm looking at it out there and I got one following the glide bait, or maybe I see a big shadow underneath the wake bait. I'm going to speed it up. I'm going to do something crazy with that cadence. If it's a wake bait, I might start walking it real hard where it's just waking. And now all of a sudden it starts cutting back and forth. Triggers a strike. Maybe it's a glide bait that they're just following it as I'm gliding it. And maybe I cut it a couple times real hard and they come up and smack it. Or maybe I'm looking at my Panoptics and one's following it. I go, pop, pop, pop. And that swim bait that's just on the bottom going slow just darts up and it just gets them to react. I can't tell you how many times that is the deal. So that would be my one advice. If you're going to go out there and throw big swim baits, do not hesitate to actually speed up your retrieve with followers rather than slow it down.
So, like that.
Yeah.
I think we could all use that in like just general terms of fishing too. Like how many times with a jerk bait have people like slowed way down when one comes up, like even on forward, like whatever your forward facing sonar is, they're moving that jerk bait and they see one rise and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I gotta slow down, and then it turns away. But if you just speed up or go into a steady rhythm, like you can get them just a fire on it. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's very interesting. Fishing is interesting. It's fun.
Yeah. I just think about like predatory bass. They are so aggressive. We think of them as like, man, it's such a tough bite. I got to fish slow and drag a drop shot or a shaky head. And don't get me wrong, sometimes you got to do that. But you're talking about a predatorial fish that's been in the water for however long you think the earth has been. Bass have been here. Like they are predatory fish. They freaking are quick. They're explosive. They're accurate when they eat, except when they eat my glide baits. They just never get the hooks. They just get all the space between the hooks. But, they're predatorial fish, man. They are made to eat swimming very fast. So, I just tell guys, if you're grinding out there, you're struggling, you're getting a lot of followers, Sometimes the answer is to speed it up. Sometimes the answer is actually also to upsize your bait rather than downsize your bait. So I've seen that work. I can't even tell you how many times where it's like they're just following a small glide bait. Let me go to something a little bit bigger. And then that's actually when they're reacting to it. So those two things right there are key to success.
I really like it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for taking the time, Austin, to join us here on the lab. I want to say thank you. And I'm sure we'll be chatting soon, but I will let you get out of here before the little one wakes up and go catch some more giants. And hopefully we'll get you up here soon to catch some smallmouth.
I think you're catching more giants than I am right now, dude. I haven't been on the water hardly at all. My guys, I've got 3 guys guiding today. And I don't know, it's kind of nice, like owning a business and having people guiding for me, and I can make money, relatively passively. But part of me is like, I kind of want to be on the water more. So
yeah, time to get back and take a trip or two yourself.
That's exactly right.
Or just go fishing. Like
that's probably what I need to do. The problem is they're using all my boats. So owning a good guide business is a great excuse to having 3 or 4 bass boats. The problem is when you're booked all the time, you can't use them for yourself.
Fair point. So, all right, Austin. Well, thanks again, man. And we'll be chatting real soon.
Cool, man.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
We'll chat soon. Yep. Bye now. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for tuning into this week's episode here on the lab, where we're talking wake bait, glide bait, style baits, and slightly subsurface. Austin is an awesome guide, owns quite a few boats, it sounds like, down there in North Carolina. So if you're in that general region, the Highland Lakes, make sure you look up his guide service. Get out on the water, throw some big baits around it. I mean, they're trout eaters, so there's a shot at a true lifetime giant down there in make sure you do that. It'll be linked down below in the description. But as always, if you're on YouTube, leave a comment on your favorite glide bait or wake bait, big glide bait or wake bait that you like to use on the surface to drop big bites. Hit that subscribe button. Man, I can't even talk. And then throw us a thumbs up on this video. We greatly appreciate it. If you are on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, there is a review button. Please hit it. Leave a review about the show. It helps the show be seen to more people who love bass fishing. This platform is all about education, sharing techniques and baits, and helping everyone put more bass in the boat, kayak, or on the bank. So we appreciate everyone who tunes in on a weekly basis, and we will see you all next week.